afternoon. So let's get this right. I've got the post one shot. I'm talking about everyone's least favourite topic, pensions. And I'm planning to show a live demo. What could possibly go wrong? I don't even have a connected basketball to wow you with. So anyway, as per the introduction, my name's Kenneth May, and I'm the lead architect at Origo. You were softened to the American accent earlier, so I hope my Scottish one gives you a welcome break for the next half hour or so. And it's not often I stand up in a room big enough for a rock concert to be in to talk about pensions. And although I share my surname with the Prime Minister, I'll attempt to avoid her coughing fit if nerves get the better of me. So despite that difficult subject matter, I'll do my best to make it as exciting as possible. Although it's fair to say, as was introduced, exciting isn't the word that's used often in our industry. From a consumer's point of view, pensions can often be seen as boring and complex. From a technology perspective, we're often talking about legacy systems and rather uninspiring technologies. And the so-called technologists in this industry often turn up to these events wearing ties and a throwback to the 90s. So excitement is debatable, but what I can 100% guarantee today is that this will be one of the most important topics to be discussed. The UK Pensions Dashboard is an exciting initiative and one of enormous ambition, and it has a real social purpose. It could truly transform our industry and, indeed, the public finances. And for that reason, I'm delighted to be here today to tell you about the great work that Origo are doing in partnership with ForgeRock. Everywhere we look, technology is accelerating, and it's either having a wonderful or maligning effect on companies and individuals. In my industry, the current buzz is around blockchain and the use of artificial intelligence to provide robo-advice. Yet, in 2017, and in stark contrast to those sexy technologies and the relentless pace of change, as an industry, we still can't reliably identify a consumer in order to inform them about the savings they already have accumulated with the industry. We've got a climate of technology-infused consumers, and they quite literally have the world at their fingertips, but unfortunately that world is rather devoid of information about their financial future. You shouldn't underestimate how hard it is actually to get information on pension savings in the UK. The eagle-eyed amongst you will have spotted that from the website, that I have had 3 employers since leaving university. So as a result, I've got a collection of somewhat complex pension pots to manage, and even as an industry insider, I find it very problematic and would benefit from a better way of keeping track of things. I'm sure you're all in very similar positions looking at your own circumstances. It's an issue that affects us all in society. It's actually just struck me that my boss is sitting in the front row gesticulating at me, so please don't boo me off the stage or I'll have another pension to add to my list to manage. Many people are less well engaged with their retirement savings than I am. Some may have moved jobs more often and have therefore accumulated more pots. Woe betides them in trying to plan for their retirement online. Furthermore, as an industry, we're very large and complex. 100 million pots of money are administered by more than 300 different companies, and estimates suggest there are over £1 billion of unclaimed pension savings and dormant assets as a result. What's more, the problem is getting worse. DWP figures suggest that by retirement, the average person will have 11 separate pension pots. And recent legislation, which automatically enrolls millions of new savers into pensions for the very first time, has been a tremendous success. But many of these new savers are less well engaged with pensions and are likely to lose track of their savings as they progress through their careers. So society has changed. People move jobs more often. Access to high-quality employer pension provision is being restricted, and the public finances are stretched. The bottom line is people need to take more responsibility for their own retirement future, and for that they require information. And that, in a nutshell, is the purpose of the Pensions Dashboard. We want to bring a comprehensive, simple, consolidated view of pensions to tens of millions of UK consumers for the very first time. Quite simply, what have I got? And where is it? The example you're seeing on the screen at the moment shows a state pension projection along with private defined contribution and defined benefit arrangements, the basic information needed by consumers. But getting us to that level of consumer engagement is quite a challenge for us as an industry. But it's also very exciting from an IT perspective. It involves cutting-edge technology and a level of API-led connectivity and secure, permissioned access to data never seen before in our industry. And at the core of the whole proposition is identity. So just a very quick word on who we are. So Origo is a not-for-profit financial technology company based in Edinburgh. We specialize in solving collective issues through collaboration. We've been governed and motivated to do that for over 25 years, initially as an e-commerce standards body, but in recent years, we've had a strong track record in bringing IT services to market. For example, we operate an identity platform for financial advisors called Unipass, an integration hub that connects platforms to those consuming their data, and our marquee service is the options transfer service, which has safely and securely transferred over £100 billion of pensions between providers. The reason Origo became involved in the pensions dashboard is because of our consumer focus and the need for a collaborative approach across the whole of the industry. We have made a large self-funded commitment on behalf of the industry. We started this journey in early 2015 when the industry recognized there was a big problem in finding the pensions of those approaching retirement. And we set about trying to solve that core problem. What have I got and where is it? A phrase that we probably should have trademarked, given it's now in widespread use. We formed a cross-industry project working group seeking to create a central index of pensions, but we refocused on this in 2016 as the dashboard-style approach became favoured. And this was cemented when George Osborne stood up to deliver the 2016 budget and announced that government will ensure that industry designs, funds, and launches a pensions dashboard by 2019. Following the government announcement, Origo reiterated its commitment to the industry with a focus on building the central components and the back-end processes to enable the pensions industry to efficiently support the dashboard community. In other words, Origo will provide the plumbing. We worked collaboratively on an open identity exchange Pension Finder Alpha project, and we led the architecture and standards work stream, co-presenting the white paper in May 2016. This made a number of recommendations for further activity. As I mentioned up front, at the heart of the whole initiative is identity. We've been working with ForgeRock and the ForgeRock identity platform through most of the development phase. ForgeRock Access Management provides comprehensive capabilities to control access to our protected resources, and the ForgeRock Identity Gateway provides flexible policy enforcement. So we've deployed this ForgeRock solution to our cloud environment to support the prototype requirements for OAuth, OpenID Connect, and SAML interactions. And we're also using directory service and user-managed access capabilities, as we'll come on to shortly. In combination, the ForgeRock products provide a comprehensive security layer which ensures that our APIs are not invoked until the appropriate security credentials have been obtained and the consumer's identity has been successfully verified. The ForgeRock technology has been key to our delivery. But equally as valuable has been the expertise of the ForgeRock team as we move towards delivering the pensions dashboard. So following the Chancellor's announcement, the Association of British Insurers was selected to manage the project on behalf of the project sponsor, Her Majesty's Treasury. In late 2016, the ABI ran a competitive selection process for technology development partners to build a prototype, and Origo were one of 6 companies from the fintech sector who were selected from over 60 expressions of interest. I hasten to add that we were all engaged on a pro bono basis, further underlining the social importance of the initiative. The ABI prototype architecture is quite simple to explain. At the top, we have the consumer who interacts with a number of dashboards. These could be provided by on a competitive commercial basis, or by an organization for the public good. They could be standalone, but there's also a lot of talk about combining a pensions dashboard, perhaps with internet banking, or within a portal provided to employees at a large organization. And underneath this sits the main component, which is where we come in, the Pension Finder service. Our component is designed to be the trust anchor for the ecosystem. Any previous identity assertions at the dashboard are not trusted. And we integrate with identity providers via an identity hub which supports a federated approach as per the gov.uk Verify solution. We also deal with the required GDPR-ready compliant consent processes. Behind the scenes, what the Pension Finder Service is doing is providing the vital plumbing. It orchestrates requests to the large ecosystem of pension companies, and its role really is to abstract the complexity for other participants in order to provide an efficient and scalable service. So towards the bottom of the screen there, what we see are two different endpoints for the Pension Finder Service: the pensions companies directly, and integration service providers, who are technology companies working on behalf of the pensions companies to transform their legacy data to open standards and improve data quality. The ABI project involved a great deal of integration to dashboards, to the identity solution, to the major pensions providers that are shown on the screen. And it successfully demonstrated all the important interactions and implemented a very basic consumer consent process. At the Pension Finder Service, we use a cloud-based integration platform from MuleSoft for our business layer. And within our solution, the ForgeRock components deal with the requirements for security interactions, together with the complexities of token exchange, dealing with assertions from the identity providers, and so on. So essentially, the APIs exposed by our business layer are protected by ForgeRock. When the dashboard accesses an API, we check to see if there's a valid token. If not, an identity is established through the Identity Hub and in turn onto the chosen identity provider. One thing that is very important to note is that this identity solution is fully compliant with the IDAP and PCAG guidelines that gov.uk Verify implements. One of the lessons that we learned from this project is there's a huge benefit to using proven and established standards. So on a standards basis, the integration with the Identity Hub and the identity providers use SAML 2 open standards, and attribute sets are returned as identity claims in the SAML assertion. They all conform to the gov.uk Verify standards for level of assurance 2.
Did you know we could have up to 11 different jobs in our lifetime? This means we could gather up to 11 different pension pots. And 1 out of every 3 of us finds it hard to keep track of them. Now, however, government, industry, and development partners are working together to make everyone's pensions easier to manage. We're proud to present the Pensions Dashboard Prototype project. We've built an infrastructure prototype which could one day give people easy access to all their pension information in one place of their choice. The theory is simple. It's a 4-step process: verifying your identity, giving consent to securely share your data, searching for the pension pots, and presenting all of the details in the same place. Let's look at Noah, who's a few years away from retirement. He knows he has several pensions, but he's struggling to find them all, and so make better plans for his future. Noah has already registered with gov.uk Verify, having already checked his state pension online. It's easy for him to log into a pensions dashboard to find all his pensions by verifying his identity in a similar way. Only Noah can access his pensions. Strict data standards means that it's only his own data that Noah can see. Personal data is protected by law. Noah must proactively consent to his details being shared, data such as his national insurance number, date of birth, and surname that can identify him uniquely and make sure of retrieving his pension data, his alone. Without Noah's consent, the dashboard can't help him. No data is shared. Noah waits a few seconds while the dashboard starts retrieving data from registered providers. Some may connect directly, some may connect through trusted third parties. Here come the details. The dashboard has found 7 pensions, plus his state pension. Noah sees the estimated total valuation. It's a handy summary, and it's clear that this is only an estimate. The regulators will have to decide what can and can't be shown beyond the basic information from each separate pension found. Noah can look into each pension a little more. Clicking on his state pension shows information from DWP, the same data he'd seen by going through the Czech State Pension Service. Clicking through into his other pensions, Noah can see some more details and the contact details for each provider. How does this all work? A pension finder service enables secure communications between all pension providers, dashboard hosts, and industry partners who are involved with the systems. If Noah can't see one of his pensions, he can make contact with the provider. The details are all listed for him to browse. He knows his data is safe and how to find out more about his savings in the future. Making plans is easier when you can see how much you've already saved and find all the information about your pension pots at the same time.
Okay, that started a bit more abruptly than expected, but that is effectively the first phase. That was the prototype that we delivered for the ABI, which has been extensively demonstrated to the Treasury Steering Group, to government ministers, and the wider industry through a series of challenge sessions. It was also a feature of UK FinTech Week, where a number of competing teams applied innovative user interfaces on top of the pensions data shown. So that prototype showcased a basic consent process and suggested a high-level architecture, but it fell short of defining a target architecture for a full launch. So we attempted to fill the gaps by a parallel open identity exchange project. Government Digital Services sponsored the project. The Department of Work and Pensions were key contributors to the design approach and also provided indicative security requirements for accessing the state pension. GDS and IDEMIA, together with SecureKey, provided expertise and infrastructure for a private sector version of the gov.uk Verify identity solution. ForgeRock provided the technology to Origo for the solution and also significant expertise on attribute exchange and UMA. LV were involved for consistency with the ABI project, and we at Origo provided the prototype and did our best to try and to coordinate things. We're quite good at herding cats. The formal hypothesis on the screen, but essentially the key objective was to try and provide timely input to the strategic architecture, and in particular to design and prove the connection to a private sector version of the Verify Identity Hub, aligning with GDS standards, and also to design an approach for integrating with DWP for attribute exchange of state pension data. Neither of those topics were explored by the ABI project. There were a number of requirements that were explored in the project, and some of the key drivers are listed on the screen for you. But essentially, it led us to a solution based on private sector equivalent of the gov.uk Verify solution for federated identity, along with an approach to attribute exchange and resource access based on user-managed access, or UMA. And please do note that it is never UMA if you want to be taken seriously, as we, to our slight embarrassment, discovered in an early workshop. As you may know, UMA is an OAuth-based profile and is designed to give web users a unified control point over who and what can access their personal data, content, or services wherever it lives in the web. For those of us working under within the EU under new GDPR requirements, it is an obvious consideration. And from an implementation perspective, ForgeRock software provides UMA support out of the box. Indeed, our pension finder service has become a good reference implementation using ForgeRock technology. When discussing UMA, several actors have achieved fame or perhaps infamy. One common example used is Alice. The idea is that Alice can actually have two incarnations. She can be small Alice, or wee Alice, as we would probably say in Scotland. And in this guise, she hasn't been assured to the level required to participate and access data. In our pensions example here, she may have logged onto the Standard Life portal with credentials issued by that particular pensions company. But why should Aviva or the government, down at the bottom of the screen, trust Standard Life to have properly checked Alice's identity? In order to establish that trust, we need an entity to step up the assurance to the required level. In our example, we're using level of assurance 2. And on the project, we're using the Verify Identity solution to do that. Little Alice here logs on to Verify and then becomes Big Alice, and those relying on her identity can now have confidence that she really is truly Alice. In a pensions dashboard context, we apply this principle to Alice as a consumer, and we have further actors in Bob and Carol, her financial advisors. No discussion of UMA is complete without this diagram, so I'll swiftly cover the concept for those that aren't familiar, and then focus on how they apply to the pensions dashboard. So UMA defines resource owners who control protected resource access by clients. The clients are operated by arbitrary requesting parties, where the resources, and in our case, these are pensions products that reside on a number of resource servers, and where a centralized authorization server governs access based on policies defined by the resource owner. Applying this to the pensions dashboard, we've got our actors, Alice as a requesting party, and Big Alice as a resource owner. We've also got IFA Bob as a requesting party. The client is the client management system or the pensions dashboard accessing the data. And the pension finder service now becomes an attribute exchange hub, which makes authorization decisions using ForgeRock supplied authorization server, essentially asking the question, can I allow this requesting party access to this resource? And the pension providers make the resources, quite simply the pensions data, available and register these for protection at the authorization server. So that was a whistle-stop tour of UMA for the pensions dashboard. There's much more detail in the OIX white paper, so I'd encourage you to read this. But the main outcome of the white paper was a target architecture with 3 key parts: the use of verified compliant digital identities, secure access to state pension data, and consumer consent models that support controlled attribute sharing and delegation to financial advisors and other parties. And of particular note was the development of a profile for an open standard based on UMA, which meets the DWP's indicative requirements for the release of state pension data. The key reason for the OIX project was for industry to work with government on an appropriate design for accessing state pension data. The benefits are fairly self-evident, and I've covered most of it already. It was, however, recognized that further work would be required to look at the potential for an UMA-based approach within the concept of an attribute exchange hub that could incorporate a pension finder service. But guess what? We've done it. Following on from the publication of the white paper, we've aligned our work to the design principles and target architecture, and we've worked with ForgeRock to deliver a second phase of the prototype. I've actually counted 8 external dependencies to environments which we have absolutely no control of, but luck permitting, I'm going to show you a live demonstration of this shortly. So just a quick recap. The ABI project you saw in the video looked at basic integration and architecture. The OIX project set the direction for a target architecture, and at Origo, we are aiming to be at the forefront of industry implementation. So we've taken the outputs from both of those earlier projects and have implemented an UMA-based target architecture for private pension attribute exchange. Of particular interest to our stakeholders at Origo is delegated authority to a financial advisor. This has been the focus of our second phase of development, and is what I will show you next. And this is one final slide before we move to the demo, and it's just a pictorial representation of the architecture. The pension finder service has now primarily become concerned with federated consumer authentication, authorization, and initial orchestration of the search for pensions across the industry. The pension provider or a technology company operating on their behalf matches consumers with their pension resources and then registers resource sets with a universally unique identifier. Dashboards cache a list of found resources for the consumer and can then request those resources directly. So we have broken down the demo into a number of scenarios, and I think it's just coming up on this screen here. So we've got 3 scenarios that I'll just quickly walk you through. The first scenario involves a consumer-facing dashboard. There's a high-level workflow over on this side, but I'll try and talk things through as I go. One thing to see is, unfortunately, we don't have an Alice in our test data set, so I'll introduce you to another lady called Isabella Taylor, who, for the purposes of this demo, is Alice. So I will just log on to the pensions dashboard. So we get to a landing page. This could be internet banking. It could be a portal on the employer. But the key point at this point in the process is that we haven't verified Alice or Isabella in this case in order to get to the right level of assurance in order to give her access to the pensions data. So we go through a step-up process to verify Isabella, and we're logging on with an identity provider, one of the verify participants, through an identity hub. So I will sign on as if we're going to verify. Obviously, this would be multi-factor authentication, but for the purpose of the demo, that has been removed. So now Isabella gets to the stage that she shares consent with the Pension Finder service in order to go and search for her pensions across the industry. And all things going well, I'm going to refresh that because there's a bit of a timing issue. But what we've got now is we've got 4 pensions found for Isabella. She has a defined benefits contract with Aviva and 3 defined contributions pensions. So that effectively was replicating what we saw in the earlier ABI demonstration. But what we've done is we've introduced UMA protection for the resources. The second scenario is around how the consumer then shares access to her financial advisor. So we select an advisor for Isabella. We've got a number of tested entities. So we've got one called Bob here, which I'll use. So I will grant access to Bob and perhaps also to Carol. I can then come out of here. Behind the scenes, the ForgeRock kit has done all the clever bits and pieces that your kit does in order to register those resources and set up the permissions for the advisor then to come in and collect the data. And behind the scenes, what's happened is a notification has been sent to the advisor's system to say that resource has been shared. So I can now move on to the advisor accessing that data. So we will log on as IFA Bob. And like Isabella, Bob has to step up to the right level of assurance, which seems to be going a little bit slow, but hopefully we'll get there. So for this, we're using a separate solution based on Unipass. Unipass is an existing Oracle service used by over 35,000 advisors. It's essentially the pension industry's primary IDP for advisors. So we're using that for advisors and Verify for consumers. So I'm now stepping up from Little Bob to Big Bob, and again, consenting. So this dashboard is effectively the financial advisor's view. It's a typical client relationship management software, so we can go in, look at existing clients, and we can see that Isabella Taylor is one, and there's now one pension shared with this particular financial advisor, just to prove that we're not just hard coding all of this. I will grant access to Bob to another pensions policy, and then I should be able to go back to the client list and go back into Isabella, and the Scottish Widows pension now appears on that particular list. So I think we want to go back onto both screens, please. I hope you found the demo interesting, but my worry is that the simplistic user interface hides months of work by many parties, including ForgeRock. I want to leave you now with two very quick, very positive messages. Firstly, about the Pensions Dashboard project, and then on our experiences of working with ForgeRock. On the Pensions Dashboard, excellent progress has been made in a very short time. On the OIX project, the UMA profile and sequence diagrams were developed by the DWP and refined via workshops, and these have been provided to the Kantara Initiatives UMA Working Group and the OIX Industries Working Group on Attribute Exchange. And as you've just seen, we've now built that into our prototype. At Oracle, we have ambitions to build and operate the central components of the Pensions Dashboard infrastructure. We stand ready to do so, and we're working with ForgeRock to ensure that this is feasible and that there are no technological barriers to success. This will be a population-scale service connecting 25 million people, with corresponding verified digital identities to their pension pots. It plays to Origo's core strength in collaborating to provide mission-critical and widely used cross-industry shared services. We do believe that we're ready for a 2019 launch, and that the Origo Pension Finder service can form the foundation of an attribute hub for the pensions industry that could also be extended to other business processes. In the last few days, the ABI Managed Project Group has set out recommendations for next steps. The industry called on government to set out legislation to ensure that all pension providers and schemes make their data available. Origo strongly supports the recommendations that consumers should have a right to access information about all of their pensions in one place of their choice and in a standardized digital format. I'm delighted to be able to inform you that the Pensions Minister, Guy Opperman, has today responded by announcing that the Department of Work and Pensions will take forward the development of the Pensions Dashboard. Origo will work closely with our industry stakeholders and the government on the next steps to help make this scheme a success for consumers. And I'm delighted to see colleagues from the DWP in the audience today. And finally, moving on to ForgeRock. I hope I've shown today that the Pensions Dashboard is a valuable case study and reference implementation using their technology. I may even have shown that the pension industry is a bit more exciting than it first seems. I'm particularly keen to stress that we've had excellent support from ForgeRock from the outset of this initiative, especially considering that neither of us have had any payment at all for our work. I'd like to give special thanks to Andrew Potter, who's sitting over there, who's been key to our delivery. And there are some takeaway lessons in the slides, including some suggestions for product improvements. But the key message is that there is a lot of complexity here. Understanding, implementing, and demonstrating federated identity, attribute exchange, and UMA is hard. It's a complex specialism. Some of that complexity was mentioned by Scott McNeely earlier. We looked at a centralized consent console as a starting point. It comes out of the box with ForgeRock. But we were worried about the complexity of the user experience, so chose something that's very domain-specific. This will obviously have to be tested with real consumers. The bottom line is that as the architect responsible for our solution, I wouldn't have contemplated doing this without engaging with a leading identity platform. ForgeRock have continually delivered for us, both through their product features and also by the execution of their team. I look forward to our journey together and to bringing the Pensions Dashboard to the 25 million people in desperate need of sufficient information to plan for their retirement. Thank you.